You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
Welcome back, nerds, to Nerd Best Friends. I'm Analese, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey, it's me, Rob, your best friend, your podcast host, and your glue-sniffing foam smith. The Nerd Best Friends podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. Subscribe and follow us now.
This is Season 2, Episode 28, and today we are talking to Alison, Instagram user Sayadina42, who just won LA Comic Con's Best in Show for cosplay. And we're going to talk to her about her cosplay journey and about an area of nerdism that Rob and I are really not familiar with. But first, Rob's recommendations.
Here's what I'm going to recommend. Rotate your game masters. If you, like us, are playing...
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I'm not just being lazy, Annalise. I'm telling you. Rotate your game master. As somebody who's been the forever DM in so many situations, rotating through and giving a different storytelling perspective and giving other players a chance to play together is very important. And it's very nice for that forever DM in your life. I bring this up because recently in our Saturday game, Annalise, which we have been playing every Saturday for how long now?
We're like a year and a half, maybe.
Couple years, almost 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
We rotated through, and another member of that group is running the game, which has given me the opportunity to play as a character along with Annalise and with my son. I'm having a blast. It's
a
like
fun game.
I can't, I don't know the last time I got to play Dungeons and Dragons with, as a player with Annalise. It happens very rarely.
This might be the first time, honestly. Maybe the second.
Yeah, and even more rarely with Andrew, being as he is like absolutely chip off the old block. If it's not me running the game, it's him running the game, vice versa. We almost never get a chance to be players together, get up to fun roleplay shenanigans and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're a person who is playing in a game and you have not yet taken that jump to run a game for a couple of sessions, do it. Everyone there is rooting for you. Nobody is going to be like, oh, wow, you sure did a bad job running a game for us. No, they're going to be thankful, and it's going to change up the look and be really fun. So that's my recommendation. Rotate your game masters in whatever RPG you're playing.
How about some nerd mail? Rob, you got anything for us this week?
I did. We heard from a listener regarding our Superman episode that we did a few back. And I remember in that episode, I had mentioned the Justice League cartoon and the Superman cartoon version of Superman being a really solid, quintessential version of Superman that I really like. But in one of as we were talking through, the most complete story, the most interesting story, the most different story, all those kinds of things, listener Andrew wanted to point out that the Justice League episode for The Man Who Has Everything is an absolutely fantastic episode of Superman that if you know anything about Superman, like came from this other planet, crash landed on Earth, adopted by Martha Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack, he moves to Metropolis, just the bare bones of that story. In this one, a villain captures Superman and kind of puts him in this dream state of reality where all of that stuff is flipped on its head. The idea being like, if we could, Matrix style, put Superman into a situation where he didn't have all of these tragedies and instead everything worked out just right for him, then he'd never want to wake up and he wouldn't bother us anymore, the Legion of Doom going out and doing our things. Very sweet and emotional look at Superman as you see the opposite of everything that he has to deal with. We talked a bit about it in that episode. Like, some people don't like Superman because they think he's boring, because he's overpowered and those kinds of things. This would be an example of one of really good writing where somebody just gets it. And it's like, no, Superman is overpowered and he's the Boy Scout and he's a symbol of heroism despite all of the terrible things that has happened to him, or maybe even because of the terrible things that has happened to him and around. And that's a different way to look at it, which is super cool.
Well, that's a great addition to that list. Yeah.
What do you got?
Our Firefly episode and our Romy and Michelle episode has brought out of the woodworks maybe people who have never listened to the podcast before. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from both our social media, and our listeners and subscribers have gone up, which is great. Listeners, please keep sharing and subscribing and listening to the episodes. I did get one that called me out on the Romy and Michelle episode because I totally glossed over something that I quote all the time from Romy and Michelle's. That's the line where Romy is at the club trying to pick up boyfriends for them to take to their reunion with them. And this guy in a really nice suit walks up. She's like, "Hey, that's a really nice suit." And he's like, "It's Armani." And she goes, "Wow, what do you do?" "I'm a suit salesman." And she stands there for like a second and then says, "Please excuse me. I cut my foot earlier and my shoe's filling up with blood." And then she drags her foot as she walks away. It's this random, like, stupidest line to get out of being hit on. And then she follows it up with the physical comedy. It's hilarious. And I say that a lot around my Romy and Michelle friends. And so I said,
really?
"I can't believe you didn't mention this as your favorite quote." And they're right. Keep listening, keep interacting, keep writing in, and go rate us. Give us a 5-star. We're your best friends.
That is great. And you know what else is great? Our website at nerdbestfriends.com. While you're there, check out episodes, descriptions, and all kinds of stuff. If the mood strikes you, there's a tip jar on there as well.
Okay, nerds, we're here to talk about cosplay, and we have a very special guest today, Alison, Instagram at Sayadina42. Welcome to the show, Alison. Please give us a little bit about yourself and some of your nerd cred.
Hi, it's cool to be here. I've never been on a podcast before, so thanks for asking me.
Welcome.
I have been into costuming for a while, cosplay as such relatively recently, but I've been into some of the sources for some of those things for, almost as long as I can remember, as far as, always like sci-fi and fantasy movies, TV, that kind of thing, as well as books. Big Star Wars fan.
Very good. Very good. Wait, we got a tangent. What's your favorite Star Wars?
Oh, which movie?
Like which movie, which series, and anything in the Star Wars universe, if you had to call your favorite.
If I got to go with a favorite, then it's the original. Nice. It's Star Wars, now known as A New Hope, but
right. And now is episode 4.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Very good.
Agreed.
We throw that out a lot and talk about it. My favorite is Rogue One. Just throwing that out.
Ooh, it's good, but
yes,
I've only been able to watch it once.
Have you watched Andor?
I'm in the middle of it, actually.
Oh, okay, very good.
Because I like Diego Luna, so like
true.
One of those actors that like if he's in something, I'll see it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that for reasons.
Great reasons, all good. Okay, tangent over. Please continue. Star Wars fan. Sources of cosplay. Anything else you'd like to let us know?
Other big thing, I guess, is Labyrinth. And it's really the Labyrinth Masquerade here in Los Angeles that got me into that deep dive costuming thing. So various other stuff, but I think those are the big ones.
Very cool. Rob, so you are aware, and so that our listeners are aware, I know Alison from undergrad. We both marched in the greatest marching band in the history of the universe, very much in common with one of our earlier guests, Stacy, also in music education world. And it's been pretty cool to watch Alison's path and journey in this cosplay world, and led to having Alison on the show today. You were just announced as Best in Show in Los Angeles Comic Con. Can you tell us more about that?
At Los Angeles Comic Con, they have a cosplay contest. Many cons, of course, will have a cosplay contest, even some of the smaller cons and so forth. I entered, this is my second time entering the main contest. And then there was a previous year that I entered a smaller contest. So in 2019, they had a contest that was specifically for the Dark Crystal.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so I had made an Agra costume for the Labyrinth Masquerade. And then I saw later after that there was going to be a Dark Crystal contest. I'm like, well, I already have this Agra costume. I think I'll try entering it. So I went to that, and that was pretty fun. I can tell you more about that one later if you want. Of course, 2020 was 2020. And then in 2021, I saw some information about the main contest and about the prize money attached to it. And I'm like, I could use that. And thought, well, what do I have that I can use? And I had another Labyrinth costume that I had already made, which was my Clocks costume. And so I spent a solid week, like all of my Thanksgiving break, adding some additional details to that to just kind of upgrade it and make it more extra, and took that to LA Comic-Con and entered that in the Journeyman division, because even though I'm relatively new as a costumer, I don't think I'm quite young and inexperienced enough that I should be a novice beating up on the novices. That's not cool. So I went in as a Journeyman, and I won the Journeyman division in 2021. So that was pretty fun. And then just kept making more and more things over the course of the last couple years. And again with the Henson stuff, I went to a con about 3 weeks before LA Comic-Con called The Great Conjunction. Okay. That was specifically for the Dark Crystal, like 40th anniversary of the Dark Crystal and nothing else, and all kinds of the people who were part of making the Dark Crystal, as well as making the Dark Crystal TV show. Right. And so I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to make for this? I knew I wanted to do something, and kind of looked at my options, watched the whole Age of Resistance show again to see if there was anything from that I wanted to use, and ended up deciding that, well, it's the Great Conjunction, so we got to have an Urskek. Yes, okay. Which that's never spoken in the movie. If you've seen the movie, it's the characters, it's the creatures at the end. It's the combination of the Mystics and the Skeksis. When those two come, spoiler alert, when those two come together into one creature, those creatures are called Urskeks. So I made an Urskek costume for the Dark Crystal, the Great Conjunction event. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to enter LA Comic-Con or not, because I knew I was not going to have time being in grad school. I knew I was not going to have time to make a new thing. So I needed to look at the rules and see, okay, can I enter something that I've entered somewhere else before?
Oh, sure.
And their rules this time around did actually explicitly say you can enter it, as long as it hasn't been in LA Comic-Con before, you can enter it, even if it's been to other places. So I'm like, great. Cool, making this thing anyway. Let's take it to LA Comic-Con and see how I do. At this point, being in the Masters division and really having no idea of if I was going to even place, because the people in the Masters division do like insane things.
Well, and I can imagine in LA, you've got a lot of Hollywood connections, people coming in with some legit stuff.
Yeah, and also people who are like the novice winner is currently at FIDM, I think, for example.
Of course.
So I'm like, well, even if it doesn't win anything, it'll be fun to take it up on stage and walk it around, and that'll be cool. And backstage hanging around, seeing just some of the amazing detail that put into their costumes is just really cool. So yeah, I ended up winning Best in Show.
It is so
cool.
It
is an incredible costume.
Thank you.
And just it's super creative. I love it if you could get into the details of some of this Urskek costume. Like, is it I don't think it's a stilts situation, but it's a headgear situation. Where are you looking through? Like, it's incredible, right? So I guess I'll back up from that. So Best in Show at LA Comic-Con now, is there a circuit? Are you now part of a circuit, or did you qualify for something different, or how does that world work?
This particular contest is not a qualifier for any specific other thing. They did actually have a previous online contest this year that was part of a feeder into the main contest. But you could also, if you're, That would have gotten you, I think, probably like a paid flight and a paid pass to LA Comic Con for the people who won that contest. But you could also just, straight up enter the LA contest within their time frame. They don't take unlimited entries. You could also just enter that contest as long as you're paying your admission. Although I didn't have to pay admission because I won last year.
Okay. Very cool. Well, I had noticed on the, they gave you one of those big fake checks as the winner. And in the memo, it said National Comic Con or something. So I went, oh, Rob, I wonder if that means there's like a national of all the local winners. And we should ask Alison about that.
Right. Well, the different cons like label they all label their event as a big thing. So
sure.
Los Angeles calls themselves the National Championship.
Okay. Got it.
Locals. Okay. Anyone could enter that wanted to, they don't ask where you live,
But what you're saying is you are the National
the Crown Championships is at one of the other ones, and the world champion, like there are some, actual have to have a qualifier type events, but this is called nationals. How national it is questionable, I would say, but that's okay.
Right on.
Well, now within the community though, do people see this and are you getting requests and stuff? Like people see this and they're like, oh my gosh, you got to get that Urskek costume. Please come to Dragon Con. Please come to Gen Con. Please come to all these other places to show it off.
Not so far. I don't have like a giant following or anything. Like as of today, I think I'm at like 310 followers on Instagram, and maybe I'll get like 10 more from your podcast. I don't know. I don't know how many people listen to your podcast. Maybe it's way more, but, I'm not out to like be a big influencer or whatever. And with this particular costume also, it is not easy to transport in any way other than the car. I don't think I can safely fly or ship it. So, unless I can drive there, I'm probably not taking this one.
All right.
Yeah, I do recall that Alison put a post out, I don't know, a few days before Comic-Con, and can someone please come help me with costume things? And I was like, I was 10 seconds away from buying a pass for that day with my little brother, and we ended up not doing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do it. And it didn't work out. But I just on that post alone, and then looking at the costume, I can't even imagine how you even got there in the first place, car or no car.
Well, it all fits in the car. The Winchester house takes up the entire car. This one is actually not so bad. But I could have done it by myself if I had to, but fortunately I did run into a couple people who helped me out. One was a girl named Olivia, who I had actually met at the Great Conjunction. And then the other one was the assistant to the main organizer of the contest at LA Comic Con, who I had met last year and have followed on Instagram since. So we're only like acquaintances, but I did have some extra hands, and that was really helpful. Trying to juggle without having those extra people at those times would have been a lot more difficult.
I can imagine.
Well, that's what I want to get into, is kind of the nitty gritty of this amazing costume, from floor to tip of the tip at the very top. How tall is this thing?
About 8 feet.
8 feet.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's even bigger than I guessed.
So then I'm imagining it is some kind of shoulder harness or back brace, and you built all of this yourself. What were your materials? How does that, under the dress, what would we see as far as the skeleton goes?
Well, I built it on a bass drum harness.
Of course you did.
That's amazing.
Yes. So while I was still teaching in my last year or so, we actually replaced all of our harnesses. And so we did not need to keep all of the old ones. We kept a few of the best ones as spares rather than trash all of the other ones, because some of them were pretty thrashed. I kept some of the ones that weren't good enough to keep as spares, but fit me okay to potentially use for some kind of costume purpose. I had seen somebody else use some kind of other harness for a big thing. I'm like, ooh, it might come in handy. So I kept like 4 or 5 of them. And so, yeah, it goes, so bass drum harness, already built to support a lot of weight, already built to, fit on a body. People will maybe more commonly use a hiking backpack, but I would have had to go
with,
buy
like, the chest straps and everything that helps redistribute.
So, with the weight of this, I did have to add an extra strap to hold it around my rib cage. Otherwise, it wanted to just tip backwards.
Right.
That was kind of the base structure. And then up above that, I basically built a whole extra torso out of cardboard. Just plain old corrugated cardboard, nothing fancy, because it's relatively light, but it's, you start
it's a lot.
some braces and stuff on it, and it's really pretty strong. So that was the torso, and then I used a wig head to build the head on top of, but
that was my next question.
I had to extend the neck because the face of the creature is so long that it needed a longer neck, or it would have looked weird. So I cut the poor wig head neck. I added a cardboard tube from a roll of tape, taped back together, covered it all up, made it look good. So that's kind of the height aspect of it. And then I'm also wearing about 5-inch platform boots.
Oh gosh.
not heels. Like boots. My heels don't get along at all, but just boots where the whole thing is very tall. So there's maybe like an inch lift from my heel to my toe, but it's really pretty comfortable. It's not like I'm on my tippy toes with this crazy thing.
And then since you mentioned a wig head, that's where we'll go next. Sculpting the face and those kinds of things. How does that work?
Well, theoretically I could have sculpted an entire head, but I've never attempted to do something like that, and I have made masks. Plus I knew that I needed to do like the branches sticking out the back. So I'm like, I'll put it on a wig head, and then I'll have a styrofoam head that I can like stick the branches in. And I'll put a mask on the front of it. So for people who cosplay, they'll be very familiar with Kamui cosplay and Evil Ted. So Evil Ted is actually where I got the pattern for the torso of the thing. It was just like a basic armor pattern. I could have made a pattern, but it was easier to just find a pre-existing, this is a human torso shape. And then from Kamui cosplay, I used one of her basic mask templates and just made a sheet foam mask. And then on top of that, I then just started adding layer after layer after layer of foam clay.
Oh.
It took me many days to do it just because I had to like put a little bit and let it dry. And put a little bit and let it dry. If I put it on super thick, it would just sort of sag and droop everywhere. So just kind of built up the foam clay until it was at kind of the thicknesses I wanted. And then I carved some extra details with like a rotary tool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Analese, have you seen that process before with using that sheet foam and cutting the little pieces and stacking them and then putting the clay on and smoothing it down and all of that stuff?
No, not at all. And you know what? I don't know about you, Rob, but it's making me think of our Osiris show and how we made a 12-foot Osiris and how we could have done that totally safer than putting a kid on stilts using a base harness. Like, man, that's crazy. No, I have not seen it, but I'm picturing it. And I mean, you know what I'm going to do right after we're done making this episode is I'm going to go watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, no, it is incredible. And it's it's like sheet foam, like she said, it's like floor mats and it turns into these beautiful things. What were the branches? Are they actual sticks? Did you make them?
Yeah, they're actual sticks. Actually, I mean, I know it's not going to show on your podcast, but I haven't put this thing away, so it's sitting down here beside me on the floor.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'd love to see it in a close picture.
Right.
You know, maybe I have seen, while she's grabbing that, maybe I have seen, like I watched a fast forward of them putting.
Oh my gosh, that thing is okay. I'm glad you grabbed it because I did not understand that it was that large from the photos. This is insane.
Yeah. So it's like that. Gosh. So that all of this here on the front is the foam part that I was telling you about, and then these in the back are just branches from the floral section of the craft store. So they were already white, they were already sparkly. I painted them some, like at the base, I painted them gold to blend in with the head. But yeah, they're just craft foam branches. And if I accidentally hit the switches like I did just now, and the craft foam, these branches are all wrapped with string lights, like little fairy lights.
Right.
So the whole thing lights up. And then also the eyes on the front. For the eyes, I did solder the lights. And so those light up as well. They're not lit right now, but they light up.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah. Listeners, in addition to the Sayadina 42 Instagram, you're going to have to look for some videos of LA Comic Con and check this thing out, because seeing it in video and seeing the size of it is absolutely insane compared to the pictures.
Yeah, the contest,
very impressive.
The contest and the awards have been posted on YouTube by somebody. I think there's like one quick clip of me in one of the music videos that's been released so far, but I couldn't tell you which one.
I mean, that head, for listeners, that head took up the entire screen. Like, you couldn't fit in the entire screen.
Yeah.
That was, I'm speechless.
No, yeah, no, it's 3 feet from chin to branches.
Yeah.
Like, it
wow.
is.
Yeah, it is. From chin to the back of the head is, or to the very tips of the branches. Yeah, it's probably about a yard.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow. It's so incredible. Okay. I'm going to compose myself. And, you had mentioned the Winchester house as well as this one. I noticed that you use a lot of custom graphics and things on the textile material itself. What is your process for that? Are you painting that? Do you use silk screening? Do you get them done? How does that work?
Well, for the Urskek, that design that I used comes from the book, The World of the Dark Crystal, which is by Brian Froud, who was the primary designer for all of the stuff in the Dark Crystal, also for Labyrinth as well. In the movie, on the front of the Urskek robes, there's a very simplified version of that design, which is called the Master Time Spiral. And it's hard to even clearly see a full length, what does it even look like? But then because I had the book and I had this full, way more detailed version, I'm like, this is such a beautiful design. I'm just going to use the whole thing. I don't want to simplify if I don't have to. So for that, it was actually very simple getting it onto the fabric, because the white fabric that I was using was transparent enough that just something behind it, a printed design behind it, I could see through the fabric well enough to trace. So I figured out what size I want, and I printed out the design on many, many pieces of paper that I taped together. Just printed the whole design, the size that I wanted, set the fabric on top of it, and just, basically traced the design onto the fabric and then painted it. I used a combination of fabric markers and acrylic paints mixed with fabric medium.
Wow.
You can buy fabric paint
by hand.
Right, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, acrylic paint mixed with fabric medium is essentially the same thing as fabric paint. It's cheaper and you have more choice of colors and stuff like that. So
Sure, I was going to say, you can be a little bit more custom with colors when you do the mix like that, right?
Right.
Customize a little bit.
Right. And I for the most part, well, also, I don't have an airbrush. So everything's just brushy, blend with a brush. Maybe someday I'll get an airbrush. So that's for that one. For the Winchester house, though, a lot of it, I don't know, it kind of depends on the part of the thing. So the roof, the thing with costuming is when you're done with it, where the heck do you put it?
I can imagine. I have heard interviews with people before that will go out, they'll do a gig in a costume, they'll take the costume out and just throw it in the trash there because they have to fly home, and they used it. That's what it was for.
So
you have a part of the house. Oh, there. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was foam sealed with Plasti Dip, which is, this is really standard stuff if you look at people who work with foam. So foam sealed with Plasti Dip, did a base coat of a red color, and then just washes and stuff of other acrylic paints to get that. Wow. But also in the Winchester house, a lot of the color that you see on there is just the color of the fabrics that I used. So I did some shading on them, but it was also it was a gold silk fabric. It was a green cotton fabric.
Okay, and you just combined them out to block out the colors.
So, there's some painting on there also. So the foam elements to that they're spray painted, and then some acrylics and stuff like that. So I'll use whatever is at hand to get the effect that I want.
Wow. It's incredible. Okay, so thinking about that and having to sew together all those color blocks and then go over that. In addition, I'm seeing just amazing, lavish, ball gown style costumes. That's you? You're sewing those and out of patterns and everything?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely incredible work.
Thank you.
As Rob is trying to think of his next question, I wanted to shed some light on one of your Instagram posts from a previous cosplay thing you'd like competition or whatever you did, where you got to meet Adam Savage.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I've met him now a couple times.
Oh, pardon me.
They're friends.
But that's part of what really got me going, though, because I had been attending Labyrinth for a few years, was making and have made mostly kind of original stuff for that. Then in 2019, as I mentioned, I was making my Agra costume, and somehow the YouTube algorithm started feeding me cosplay stuff.
Yeah.
Which I had not previously been looking for. And one of the things that it fed me was Adam Savage's TED Talk about cosplay. Have you seen this?
I have.
Yeah.
Bits and pieces, yes.
It's amazing. And so, this was like fall of 2019 that I started seeing some of that stuff. And then going into 2020, with 2020 being everything that it was, I started watching his YouTube channel, Tested, like all the time. He was doing these live streams that were just really, they were just really, really good. And so as 2021 rolled around, they announced that they were going to have a mask contest for Silicon, which is his con up in the Bay Area.
Yes.
Which was not an event that I had attended. Like 2019 was my first ever time going to a con. Like, period.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not a long time con goer compared to many people. They announced a contest with this, and whoever won the contest would win free passes to Silicon and a chance to meet Adam Savage. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I'm doing it. Yes.
Because I want to meet Adam Savage.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Watching Tested nonstop for all of this time. Because I never even watched Mythbusters.
Oh, God, I love Mythbusters.
I probably would have liked it if I had, but I didn't have cable most of the time it was on. I'm like, okay, I will enter this contest and make a thing and see how I do. There was a fee involved, and they sent you a box of materials. So everybody got the same materials in their box.
Oh, okay.
And you could use everything in the box, including the box. You could add your own adhesives and tapes, but those couldn't be part of the design. They could only be used to like stick stuff together. You could use your own adhesive tape and tapes and your own paints.
This is Adam Savage's hell.
And so then the contest was held, not on Zoom exactly, but, on a similar online platform. And there were a whole bunch of people who, entered. I think it was 44 entrants or something, I think. And just some really outstanding stuff that people made. I'm sure the judges had a hard time deciding on some of them. They ended up expanding the number of winners from 3 to 5 because they couldn't narrow it down to just 3. And they also ended up giving everybody passes to the con, but the winners got like the VIP pass.
Yeah.
Just because there was so much good stuff. Yeah, I was one of the 5 winners. And that was that was the Firebird. You can actually, behind me, you can see like one.
Yes,
the wing of it. Yeah.
That's not where he belongs.
I think when I showed the picture to Rob, I called it a phoenix, but yeah.
Well,
not quite, but yeah.
They're sort of the same thing, but not exactly. Like, there's different versions of Firebirds and Phoenixes in different parts of the world. Yeah. So I made my Firebird mask, and so that was I was one of the winners for Silicon, and then I'm like, well, and they hadn't even announced if the con was going to happen yet, because I don't think we were even vaccinated yet at the time. They did eventually announce that there was going to be a con, and so I'm like, well, I will make a costume to go with this mask. Then I made a dress that went with it, where it shows like the Russian story of the Firebird, and
it's brilliant the way the fire goes around the neck and then into the design of the dress. But I just want to make sure that I understand correctly that you built that Firebird out of stuff you got in a box in the mail.
Yes.
Okay.
I can list the things that are in it if you want.
Oh my gosh, it is
incredible. It was so cool though to see all the different ways that the different contestants used the same materials. And the way that, the same thing that, like, we got this heavy thread, like a heavy waxed thread. And like, I used it in the little tufts at the top of the head feathers of the Firebird, and other people made it into electrical cord, and other people made it like crocheted it and it was chainmail, and other people used it to pull on little bits of their puppets. And it was awesome. But you were asking me about Adam Savage. So, yeah, so I wore the Firebird costume to Silicon, and all of the mask winners got to meet Adam Savage there, and that was fun. So he came and he like said nice things to all of us, and that was really nice. That was that time. And then roll around to this past year at Silicon, I had made the Winchester costume for that event specifically because the Winchester house is in San Jose.
Makes sense.
Like, if I took that anywhere else, they'd be like, "You're wearing a house? I don't get it." But, you go to San Jose and people are like, "I got married there. That's so cool." Stuff like that. I had won a pass from the previous year, and then we got like a voucher, I think, to get a picture with whatever celebrity we wanted to apply that to. So I'm like, well, of course I'm going to get a picture with Adam Savage. And so I had got my costume on during that time frame, and I went in the line and, came through the line. And it was so funny because, like 5, 6 people are in the room where the person can actually see you, because you're kind of going, between curtains and stuff like that. And so I kind of come through the door, and he's got 2-3 groups of people that he's taking pictures with before, and I see him like, like double take over toward me. I'm like, ah.
That's how you know you got him.
Yep. And so then got my picture taken, and that was also when they did the picture that his assistant took, which is the one that they posted. And so I got my picture taken, and then went the next day into the autograph line, wearing my normal clothes, but with that picture for him to sign. And so I get up to the front and I put it in front of him, and he's kind of like not processing it first, right? Because they're just signing everybody a million pictures, not paying that much attention. Then he like looks at it and goes, "Is this you?" I said, "Yes." He just stuck out his hand for me to shake.
Oh, I love it.
Yep.
It's so good. I mean, I understand why he's impressed. Like, the photographs of you in costume at the Winchester house are just blow me away. Who does your photography? Was that like an event, or was that a friend, or how did that work? 2
photographers. The ones inside, you're required to use their house photographers, because they have a thing where you just, you pay to go get your picture taken. They can put you in a costume, just kind of like they do at some other places. They can dress you up, or you can bring your own costume. I'd said, okay, I'm bringing my own. I didn't tell them what it was. They found out because of Silicon, but so the pictures that are inside were taken by their house photographer. And then the pictures on the outside was a photographer that I contacted through Instagram because of I'd seen some work that he had done with some other cosplayers. So I had actually never met him before that day, but he did a great job, and it was fun working with him. Forgive me if you mentioned this at the beginning, but what was your inspiration for the Winchester house? Like, does the Winchester house itself have a special significance to you, or was it just, well, I'm going up to Silicon Valley, that's what I'm going to look at? I was on a trip to the Bay Area previously, and I'm trying to remember which trip. It might have been when I went to Silicon the first time, or it might have been a different time. I forget. But I went to the house just because I had never seen it. And it is really beautiful. Have you ever been there? I have, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, just the woodwork and the windows and just all of the stuff. It's so gorgeous. I thought, hey, this would be interesting to do a costume based on this. Really? And so then I did go. So I had I think it was actually at the first time that I went to Silicon is probably the same reason, because I had it in my head for like a year. Okay, I'm going to do this next year. I did visit the house one more time once I had decided that for sure, and took some more pictures because I was up in the Bay Area for another event. Then I basically spent all of last summer nonstop working on the Winchester house. So that was basically like 3 months full time. And by the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. I need to back off because this is too much. So I don't know if I'll do something that intense again. We'll have to see. But it got you in the room with Adam Savage. Yep. Oh my gosh, they're just incredible. That being the Winchester house, now you also have 3 that I'm seeing at least of
Dark Crystal or Labyrinth inspired, big Jim Henson productions.
Right.
Would you like to talk about your love and the inspiration that those movies give you?
Well, I just, I loved them since I was a kid. So with Labyrinth, there has been, the Labyrinth Masquerade has been running in Los Angeles now for several years. But I hadn't gone to it, hadn't paid that much attention really. And then I think it was in 2015, I saw on Facebook that a friend of mine was going. And I kind of invited myself along. I'm like, can I come with you? Please. And it was a week in advance of the event. There was not time for me to make something new for it. Even, I sewed and stuff already, but there wasn't time for me to do something. But I did have already in the closet a Renaissance dress that my mother had made.
Huh.
She made it for herself a long time ago for an event, but she had given it to me. It was hanging in the closet. And I also had a mask that I had made one year for the Weekender.
Rob, the Weekender's the big annual trip the USC band makes to the Bay Area for either playing Stanford or Cal Berkeley. So each bus is generally a section, depending on how big, and each bus has a theme, and you have costumes and shirts made and foods of that theme. And then, the whole theme for the, 8-hour bus ride to the Bay Area from LA.
So I had,
what was the theme?
Well, it was it was a Mardi Gras theme.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
I had this gold mask with some red feathers on it and stuff. So I took the mask and I added way more stuff to it, put it with my mom's Renaissance dress. And that's what I wore the first time that I went to Labyrinth.
And that was the clock?
That one,
right?
I'm not sure if I have that one on my Instagram, actually.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I do. I should post it. But it's on my Facebook, Analese, somewhere way back.
Maybe that's where I saw it, because I know I showed Rob some pictures in presentation. I don't know if I was scrolling through Instagram or Facebook. I think it was Facebook. That's why we saw the clock one. I think you're right. I was just going to kind of throw out there, but that also means you had that Mardi Gras mask for 20 years before reusing it, give or take.
Maybe 15 at that time.
There you go. That's awesome.
It was a cool mask, and obviously it was worth keeping because
absolutely.
Yeah, and then made various other things. I forget. And then one year, as far as the clock one, I hadn't decided what I was going to make. I was trying basically to make my costume at the beginning of summer, because when Labyrinth hits in August, as a band director at the time, I was just totally slammed. So there was not time to work on a costume then. I needed to do it in the summer when I actually had time. So spring of whatever year I did that was 2018 actually, was the clocks. I was like, I don't know, what should I do? Hadn't decided. And I was at the Rose Bowl Flea Market. There was a vendor at the Rose Bowl Flea Market who had jewelry made out of vintage clock faces.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, that gives me an idea.
Yeah.
So I actually bought one of her necklaces that's a big necklace that is all made of vintage watch faces. Yeah, not clock faces, watch faces, little things.
Yeah.
And some of her earrings that were made of vintage watch faces, made the whole rest of the costume. Labyrinth is just magic. I don't know what else. It's just magic. So it's Dark Crystal.
That's incredible. The Agra costume is so good. It's like a deep cut. When I saw it, I didn't know it was an Agra costume, and I'm like, okay, what's the mask? Let me try with the horns. And then I saw the picture of you next to the mannequin, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's transcended from little ugly hunched Agra to this beautiful, evening gown look, and it's super clever. What is it like when people figure that out on the floor and they're walking around, or do you get questions about it, or is it great when that person goes, they're like, Agra? And you're like, yep, you got it. This is beautiful, tall Agra.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot of recognition with Agra, right. And it was a little weird because I spent a lot of time on her. There's a lot of little bits of stuff hand sewn onto that costume, and went to Labyrinth that year wearing it. And my friend who I went with had a costume disaster. She was putting together this big whole thing and it was not working at all. And she was not able to wear her planned costume. So she literally took some bed sheets and pinned together a thing made out of bed sheets and went as laundry.
All right.
Her costume got more comments than mine did.
Of course.
And I was really happy for her that her last minute I couldn't wear the thing that I worked so hard on thing got that attention, but I was still a little peeved that all my work didn't get any attention. So yeah, people did not recognize it because the silhouette is so different from the original character. And and she's a lot of the things in that movie are hard to do. Like maybe Gelflings are pretty humanoid. That's not that difficult, but the other things are hard. So sometimes people would be like, well, what is it? And I would tell them and then they'd be like, oh, that's so good.
That's what I'm getting at. Once you get it, it's amazing.
Right. So, but yeah, I had to tell people what it was. But then at the same time, partly because I hadn't gotten that feedback at Labyrinth that I really wanted, I ended up taking it more places. So I took it, that picture that you saw is from Atlanta. I took it all the way to Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
To the Center for Puppetry Arts, where Augur was on display at the time.
Cool.
They had a cosplay day for Jim Henson's birthday. Hardly anyone was in cosplay. Hardly anyone was even there. At least the people there knew what it was, and I got some cool.
True.
That was fun. And then also, like I said, I entered it at the Dark Crystal contest, and it was funny for that too, because I had never been in a contest before. For those who aren't familiar, at some contests you just walk across the stage and that's it. But at other contests like LA Comic-Con, there is pre-judging. So you go into a room, the judges talk to you, they might walk around, they might touch stuff on your costume and see, they ask first, they're good, but they'll examine things. And so I went into pre-judging for this Dark Crystal contest. There were 3 people in the panel, 2 men with British accents, 1 lady, American accent. I didn't know who they were. They asked me questions. They said nice things. I said, thank you, went on my way. Later, of course, went up to the stage for when it was time. I forget if it was for the awards or if everybody walked across the stage or what. It's been a couple of years. I was standing up there and they were talking about my costume and I was looking at the desk and I was reading the names in front of them. I'm like, holy crap, that's Toby Froud. Toby Froud is the son of Brian Froud, the designer for Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. Toby is baby Toby in the Labyrinth.
Really?
Yeah, he's the baby.
Oh.
He is now
not a baby.
Right.
He has ridden that role all through his life.
Yeah, he's a designer and a sculptor and a puppeteer in his own right. And he was like one of the head designers for the Dark Crystal TV series. And then later when I watched the making of the Dark Crystal TV series, I realized that the other 2 people were the head of the Creature Shop and the Jim Henson Company head of television. I'm like, holy
gosh.
Probably better you didn't know.
So that was my introduction to some head honchos at that company. That was pretty cool. And then I wore Agra one more time again because they finally had this Dark Crystal Con. There was an event in the spring of 2020 that I had wanted to go to that was going to be at the Henson lot. It was going to be to honor Brian Froud. I was going to maybe wear the Agra costume. And then of course it didn't happen. I wore my Agra costume to the party for the Great Conjunction, partly because I knew it would be a way for those people who I wanted to talk to recognize me.
Sure.
Yeah, and it totally worked. Like I got to the party and Hallie Stanford, who's the head of television, and Toby Froud were walking by and they're like, "Oh, hey, it's you."
We remember that costume. We remember that.
So cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, tell us more about the competition itself. So you kind of just mentioned a little bit about there's a pre-stage thing and a stage thing. Is that that it? Is there more to it?
Well, depending on the contest, there's also different ways that you go about entering. So for LA Comic-Con, you do have to register in advance. You can't just show up. And they do close registrations I think it's like by this number of entries or this date, whichever comes first, that type of thing. So you have to register in advance. For this time, they did also ask for progress pictures, proof that you had something happening, that you weren't just hoping to complete it, I guess. I'm not sure exactly why, but online registration in advance. Other contests, you just show up at the con that day and sign up at a table, and, they kind of take whoever wants to do it type of thing. So
Sure.
the rules are different depending on the contest.
And you had mentioned earlier about different levels. I think one was master and one was journeyman. What can you shed some light for us on that, the different levels?
I'm not sure how universal this is, but at least at the very few things that I've been to, this has been the way that they categorize it. They have novice, which is people who are, quite new to costuming. Journeyman, you're a little bit more experienced. I don't know that there's necessarily any particular requirement that you've won before, but just that you've had more experience, you can go in journeyman. And then if you are much more experienced, or if you have won before, a certain number of times in journeyman, then that bumps you into masters. So that, people who, are doing all the crazy stuff are not the people who are way new to it, aren't having to compete directly against those other folks. And I think that's way more fair. At LA Comic-Con this year, also, they did a thing that I thought was cool, which is they had 2 masters categories. They had just regular masters category, but also a master armor category separate from that.
Oh, cool.
Which I thought was really good, because apparently kind of within masters, it was starting to become a thing where in order to win, you had to make armor. And not everybody wants to make armor.
Right.
Blacksmithing and dressmaking are very different. Yeah.
I was glad that they separated those. I'm a little confused about where the money amounts landed for that. When the announcement they saw in the video didn't seem right to me. I think they might have had their numbers mixed up. It was nice to have those separated so that, they can give a little bit more room to both of those things, rather than having to attempt to judge some amazingly beautiful embroidered thing versus crazy foam light up thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
I always have this list in my head of like, oh, well, when I'm finished with this thing, the next thing I'm going to do, my next project is this. And the project after that'll be this. And the project after that'll be this. And then something new comes along and blows that all out of the water. Oh, no, the next thing I'm going to do is, do you want to share what's next or what you're working on now?
What I have going on in the immediate future is just some nice regular sewing.
Well, now what qualifies as regular for you?
Made some pajama pants.
Okay.
It's nice to just chill and make something simple for a change, rather than something that takes weeks or months to complete. So there's a few of those, some because it's way easier to buy fabric than it is to get around to using it. So,
as is a lot of our nerdy hobbies, I find, man, it's easy to buy plastic miniatures, but way faster than you can paint them.
Right. I have some regular sewing coming up. I'm not sure. Well, actually, I take that back. Costume wise, the things that are more definite in my mind right now are not what I would term cosplay, because cosplay tends to get used more for things that are specifically drawn from like pop culture. They're recreating a thing, or they're taking inspiration from a character or something like that. So I have a couple of original ball gown type things that I want to do for probably Labyrinth that have been waiting for a while. So costume wise, that's probably next. At some point, I need to make more Princess Leia's.
Oh, nice.
I don't think I'll ever do the bikini one. That's too naked for me, but there's several other versions of Princess Leia. I only have the senatorial Leia right now, so I need to do some more Princess Leias.
Well, I think
you want some General Leia.
Yep, General Leia.
Feels good. I really like on Hoth with the snow gear and the shoulder pads, the quilted shoulder pads. And stuff.
Right. Yeah, I've got like a casual thrift store version of Hoth Leia.
Right.
I don't know if I'll get into doing a super detailed one of that. But yeah, I want to do a couple of the ones from Return of the Jedi. At the beginning of the shutdown in 2020, I'm like, I want to make the Bouche disguise and just like walk into the grocery store with that.
Nice.
But that's a very complicated build, and I'm not ready to tackle that yet. So we'll see. Cool. Maybe someday.
Well, it has been an amazing that was really fun. Thank you so much for being here. That was an amazing interview and just opens up a whole nother world of incredible talent and craft that you have.
Thank you. But I also want to say that, for anyone who's thinking of getting into it, don't feel like you have to immediately dive into the deep end of all the crazy nutso stuff. It's also fine to just, buy a costume and wear it for fun. It's fine to make something simple and wear it for fun. Don't feel like you have to, start at the top of the ladder. Don't feel like you ever have to go to the top of the ladder if you've got other things you want to spend your time on. It's also fine to just do it in a simple way for just enjoyment rather than having to pour the crazy hours into it like some of us do. It's all good.
I think that's a great message, and I'm super impressed, even more so seeing some of this stuff not in pictures today. Also very thankful for you spending some time with us to talk to us about this, and congratulations on your very big win, Best in Show at LA Comic Con. I mean, that's no small feat, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Alison, thank you so much. This was really fun. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun to talk about.
It's time for our weekly segment. Alison, we invite you to join with us, and we'll start with you. What is the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Well, the nerdiest thing I did is this past weekend I went to LA Comic Con, dressed up one of the days, saw lots of saw some amazing costumes. Like there, even outside of the contest, there were just amazing costumes all over the place. Went to some cool sessions, had a good time.
Now, is Deadpool still a thing? Like, oh,
Yes.
I saw 10 amazing costumes and 400 Deadpools. Is that still going on?
Yes, there's Deadpool's all over the place. Spider-Man is all over the place. Loki variants are
Loki
everywhere.
variants, yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Okay.
Yeah, there's some things that you see a lot of for sure.
I want to say
I like to be the weirdo that does something no one thought of.
That's the
I
better
think that
place
makes
to be.
it so much better. But I will say, for Rob and my history, I've been to one con, and it was a little teeny one called Nerdville in Watsonville. And Rob, I think you haven't been to any sort of Comic Con. Am I right about that?
Not a Comic Con. We went to a couple Nerdtaculars and stuff like that. But as far as like big conventions, no, crowds and lines scare me.
Well, and one of my favorite ones I will say is just scrolling through hashtags or after a weekend of someone's con. One of my favorite is people who dress up like Mr. and Mrs. Wayne. Every time they approach a Batman, they just drop to the ground. It's pretty morbid, but I think it's hilarious.
Pearls go scattering across the floor.
Mm-hmm. I've seen some great pictures of like a Batman just getting into it with them and taking a picture. I mean, I think looking outside of the box is always the best way to go. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, small cons can be cool too, just because, you have way more chance to talk to people, whatever quote unquote talent is there, you have way more chance to talk to them. It's a different experience, but it can be really nice.
How about you, Rob? What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
All right. Well, to go right along with it, I have registered to run a Dungeons and Dragons game at a small con here in California in Santa Maria. So that'll be my first time attending that particular con and my first time running games at a con. So I'm taking that step and I'm going to go do that. Should be fun.
That's exciting. I'm going to be there in some sort of capacity. I can't wait.
Awesome.
That's going to be so much fun.
And what's the nerdiest thing you did this week, Analese?
So this week, we finally busted open gifts that we got for the holiday season. My partner got me Dungeon Mayhem, the D&D card game. It's based off of D&D.
I've got that game. It's great.
Do you? Yeah.
Yes.
We busted it open and started playing it. And which is funny because my partner's been like, I can't believe I fell for someone who plays D&D. I can't believe I walk into your nerd room and you're wearing your dragon mask and playing D&D. And then all of a sudden she gets this. She's like, well, I want to play it with you. And so now we're playing it and it's a lot of fun. So nerds abound suddenly in my household, which is exciting because I'm hoping it's going to open the doors, like I mentioned to you plenty of times, Rob, getting my partner to play some of these like role-playing games that I've purchased and bust out now.
That's a great little game because it's Dungeons and Dragons adjacent, but there's no like barrier to entry. Right. I've played that game a bunch of times. It's one of those games that fits in your pocket and you can take to like the brewery and spread out on the table with a couple friends, and it plays really quickly. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's without having to do a months-long campaign or even an hours-long one-shot. It's a simple game.
20 minutes.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So that's what I did this week.
Oh my gosh. That was an amazing interview. That was so much fun meeting Alison and looking at all the amazing costumes that she's done. In case you didn't get that, in case you weren't looking at all the amazing costumes as we were talking about them, certainly now you'll want to do that. So do go to Instagram and follow Alison, Sayadina42, SAYYADINA42 on Instagram to see all of these incredible and amazing costumes. While you're there, Nerd Best Friends also has an Instagram. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, that is at AleGulper.
Next episode, we're going to talk about our favorite comics that feature superheroes with our favorite teen super nerd, Andrew.
I love having Andrew on the show, and this will be a good companion piece to last season's non-superhero comic books.
Remember to subscribe, share, and give us that 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Nerd Best Friends, or send us a message by writing podcast@nerdbestfriends.com.
Super fun episode, Analese. Super fun talking to Alison. Talk to you next time.
Definitely. Thanks, listeners. It's about time we have Andrew on the show. What can we have him on the show about?
The same thing.
I'm stunned over here. It's so cool.
I know. What a get, Annalise. All right.
I'm the friend in low places now. JK. We joke about that all the time.